Welcome to The Forecast, a podcast by Brand the Growth Agency. I'm your host, Morgan Willis. On each episode of The Forecast, we'll ask our guests to give their forecast for the future of their area of expertise. We'll talk through media, marketing, and advertising trends, and sometimes we might get into some other fun too. Today, I'll speak with Adam Heimlich. Adam is the CEO and co-founder of Chalice AI, an innovative company offering ad tech solutions and custom algorithms. On the episode, Adam and I chat through his business's story, how he came to be a founder, and what his prediction is for the future of AI in advertising. Hi, Adam. How are you today?
Hey, Morgan, how you doing?
I am great. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have you on. Let's start with just getting a high-level overview of Chalice. For anybody who doesn't know, tell us about what your company is, who you are, and what you do.
All right, Chalice is a 5-year-old technology startup. The problem we solve is media buyers predicting the value of ad opportunities, right? This is something that every media buyer does, whether consciously or unconsciously, when you evaluate the price, right? Is the price lower than the value or higher than the value? This turns out to be a really good job for AI. It could predict the value based on past data, all the features of the ad opportunity, some represented in the bid request, some might be stored elsewhere. But AI can evaluate these very quickly. It turns out it takes just a few microseconds or milliseconds. Yeah, microseconds in order to predict the value of an ad impression, and then compare that to the expected price of that ad impression and get more value for any media budget. Like I say, we've been at this for 5 years, and we don't just do these predictions. We actually deploy bidding instructions in the platform of the advertiser's choice, so they could benefit from this model of predicted value and predicted cost and reap insights from it. We try to serve the biggest brands and agencies because they have the most data and the most at stake in being able to customize AI. And we've been successful in growing 3x and up for most of our 5 years. And just next week, we're about to launch in EMEA, and we've launched many case studies with great agencies like Rain.
Right. So you're an AI company. I know AI has been one of the big buzzwords in advertising, really across many industries for the last year or so, right? How do you see AI continuing to evolve to meet advertisers' needs over the next few years here?
Yeah, I'm going to borrow a bit from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who has suggested that you're going to see a split between enterprise AI and consumer AI. And what Satya said is that businesses aren't going to be able to buy into the AI model that's grown up for consumers, where it's one size fits all. You give the platform your data, they do God knows what with it. Nobody is governing it. And it tends to be monopolistic, right? There's a few huge, very powerful providers, and you don't have much choice. Enterprise AI, Satya said, is going to be much more competitive because brands aren't going to let there be a single provider. It will be governed because brands need governance of the model. And it'll be custom because when brands spend money, they're looking to do certain things with that money, right? AI is great for driving specific outcomes. So this kind of consumer AI one-fits-all model isn't quite right for them. So yeah, applying that model to ad tech, what Google and Meta really offer is consumer AI. The idea of Chalice is that there hasn't really been enterprise AI for advertisers. We think there will be. It will be competitive, and we're just the first one to achieve it.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what custom means to you? If you're an advertiser, what is the advantage of going with a truly custom solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's worth thinking about, and from your own experiences with consumer AI and what they're trying to do. These models are super powerful, right? There's billions of dollars invested and like 100 years of math. It's all being compressed into these little decisions, but they all pivot around the intended outcome, right? The intended outcome of the Netflix algorithm is to get you to watch more Netflix, get you to subscribe to Netflix, right? The recommendation algorithm. The algorithms in Amazon are obviously trying to get you to buy one more thing or sign up for Prime, right? You can tell what it's trying to do. Now, the algorithms that are in advertising platforms, they serve those platforms, just like I said about Amazon and Netflix, right? The Google algorithm's trying to maximize yield for Google while you're advertising. They don't care if you're Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T, right? They're trying to monetize themselves for all of them. So it should become clear that if you're one of those telecom companies competing with the other two, the outcome you want an algorithm to drive has to be custom to you, right? You want to grow at the expense of the other two, right? It's like this in every industry, right? So you can't be sharing the same algorithm in the same data pool. You'll all get the same result, and that's what they found really in the last 20 years of digital advertising. No competitive advantage, and big brands invest to have competitive advantage. All their products and their ad campaigns are all made to give them competitive advantage. So it kind of gets lost in the last mile of advertising. So the core idea of enterprise AI is that this thing is tuned for what you're trying to do. And it wasn't technically feasible to do it custom per brand even 5 years ago when we started. But now it very much is. So we really try to emphasize to brands that the algorithm can be tuned to your outcome. Because now what they're doing a lot is using an algorithm that's not tuned to their outcome and then manually steering against it, right? They have big teams of people who are doing manual work in the platforms, all to steer against the platform algorithm and get where that brand's trying to go. So we're trying to marry automation to real measurement and, right, get to the real destination.
Yeah. As an example of a custom algorithm, I know you worked with Rain to build an algorithm based on search data, right?
Yeah, this is one of the problems with platform algorithms. Like the use case they really serve is e-commerce, right? That's where you get a really rich signal. Someone saw the ad, they bought on the website. It's pretty easy to close that loop. But when you think about big brands that are nationally distributed, especially ones with physical product, they actually have another need, right? They need sales in certain places at certain times, depending on inventory, what they call the sales velocity or sell-through rate, the extent of their word of mouth in different regions, how the product is distributed, all kinds of factors determine what an ad is worth by location, right? So we started making algorithms for physical sales that were very location sensitive. We found they lifted sales for big brands, and Hershey is one that did a public case study with us on how it lifted sales for Hershey at Halloween, the Super Bowl of candy sales. What Rain and Rain's client figured out is that this doesn't only work for physical sales, that any national brand or global brand has a varying footprint of awareness, consideration, affinity, all these things, and that could be tracked in search data. So we partnered with EDO, a company that processes tons of search data, and started looking at the share of search for Rain's client in every DMA in America, and use this inventory algorithm to automate the allocation of budgets to make sure a share of search wasn't falling behind in any region, or where what does fall behind, they get more budget till they catch up. And this turns out to be extremely powerful, right? Because you never know your competitor's sales, but share of search is a pretty good indicator of how you're doing against your competitors in each region, right? So this helps benchmark them about where they are in each region, understand where they have ground to make up, and through the allocations, see how that it's changing across the map as time goes on. You could cover the results. It was successful. I'll say.
Yeah, it was definitely successful. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the interesting things that we did with this particular algorithm was to find areas that over-indexed for the brand, right? There was a lot of search awareness for this brand, but there wasn't a lot of awareness of the brand itself. So we identified those areas and then put more money into those markets because they're a natural fit for the brand, but people didn't know what the brand was, which was a pretty effective strategy, right?
I believe that the sales lift vastly outpaced the other line items that Rain was running. I'd love to name those companies who Chalice beat, but I guess we can't. The case study shows them. The case study shows the Chalice line against the other line. So it turned out to be a very good proxy for lift, right? It can be very hard for brands to find proxies for the outcomes that matter. For this brand, share of search seems to be a great one.
Adam, you're somebody who is pretty passionate about what you do, clearly. Can you tell me a little bit about why you're so passionate about the ad tech world?
Yeah, sure. I've always been a media person. I was a media addicted kid in the days of records and magazines, and became a very media saturated adult. I wrote for newspapers in my 20s. I was a very strong advocate for New York rap, emerging at the time in the 90s, and wrote a lot about it. And as I got older and shifted my career from journalism to marketing, I would say my fascination with media moved from like advocacy, like I like this group and not that group, to just fascination with the way some communications become massively popular and others don't, and some achieve like only critical success and grow over time, and others are overnight success. I just became, I think, fascinated with the interplay of mass communications and mass response. Once I started getting into marketing, and I started my marketing career optimizing Google search, right? It was a good job for a writer because you write the ads. And I started to see the connection between writing ads, driving commerce, growing a brand. I think it was like one of those moments that you become like hooked, obsessed with this idea that through technology, you can get real feedback on how your communications are affecting your popularity, and that popularity can be harvested as money. I was just sold, and I was relatively mature in my career. I was 32 when I started doing Google search, when search came out, so it very much felt like a second career. Now that I look back, it looks like more of a continuous fascination of media that just sort of switched its orientation when I got involved in digital marketing.
Something that I am fascinated by is the conversation around news in advertising today. I know there's been a lot of conversation around brand safety. Oftentimes, brands will implement brand safety controls, and that will take out news, which means that those publications get less spend. It's harder for the news industry to survive. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have more thoughts than we can fit in this podcast. I'm very passionate. I'm a news junkie myself, right? A former journalist. I've been a news writer and producer at other times in my life, so it's very close to my heart. And I think I'd go further than most people in there. I'm saying what happened to news is a result of bad advertising measurement, right? The only thing that publishers can monetize were clicks and last touch conversions. This strongly encouraged publishers to tend toward clickbait. Everyone knows what clickbait is, and MFA just garbage websites and garbage content, and not everyone realizes that this is incentivized by an ad monetization system that even advertisers didn't want. Certainly publishers didn't want it, not quality publishers, but not quality advertisers either. They want to advertise on quality content in which people are engaged and paying attention and feel good about, right? So it was all just an accident. I think all this proliferation of garbage in the digital media ecosystem. And yes, I'm very passionate about any attempt to fix that, but especially Chalice's attempts to fix that. I think I'll call out Ad Fontes Media and the Trade Desk and Stagwell as some organizations that are stepping up, and Chalice really wants to be with them in this conversation about improving the brand suitability measurement, right? Content analysis, and getting and really it's the valuation of the news page, which is often the most engaging pages online, right? Some of the most affluent and engaged readers, right? It really is a good match, advertising and news, but in digital it's gone awry. So it'd be great to fix.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, there are multiple studies out there showing that running content on news, even if it's something that's not necessarily brand safe, or would be considered brand safe if it's about politics, if it's about world events. It doesn't necessarily negatively impact the brand to be running on those articles.
Right. It's one of those things that it's an end run around the normal process of evaluation. If the CEO gets a call, our ad was on this horrible page or next to this horrible story, there's no, the CMO can't make any argument. They're getting called to the carpet, and the agency is going to get a call, and it's a big storm. So what I think most people don't recognize is this is a result of ungoverned algorithms, right? The problem that I started out talking about. It's like this is a consumer product that's doing an okay job of filtering, but if you're a bank with a reputation for being buttoned up, then you have to be careful in your news. You have to be very precise, and those tools exist, and they have to be matched with the banks and pharmaceutical companies and car companies in order for them to take their natural place in news advertising.
So we know why you're passionate about advertising, why you're passionate about the news industry and how it interacts with advertising, but how did you get from being in news to being in advertising to founding your own company?
I really think I've just been pulling on that thread in optimization, right? In 2002, I did my first VLOOKUP in Excel, and I attached the search keywords to the conversions and saw what I paid for each word and how much money that word came back, and I was hooked. I was like, once you could get feedback on this, optimization became my entire career. So I had a 20-year agency career of essentially sitting with the data scientists, the analytics people, the tech people when they started to come in, asking questions. How does it really work? How does it, what is a model? How does it choose? And just always pulling at that thread and asking those questions and learning as much as I could. I had some friends who split off from agency world and founded startups and had exits, so I was aware that this is something that I would like to do if I saw a good opportunity. And these things just aligned for me. In 2020, it was the pandemic, so work was scarce. There's a lot of people to talk to about maybe getting something started. I'd worked on the antitrust investigation into Google, which had given me a new view of the market, an idea of competition over algorithms. I read a book that was important in the founding of Chalice called Competing in the Age of AI. It's by Marco Ianciti and Lakim, I can't remember his name, Lakshani, I think. Great book. And I started to I think I achieved some foresight. I can say now that certain things would come to pass by 2025 that have come to pass, that there'd be a reduction of trust in the big platform algorithms, and they would push too hard on one-size-fits-all AI and open up room in the market for custom AI that serves big advertisers. And I think one of the key insights was that the platforms wouldn't do this themselves. A lot of the investors we pitched back then said, won't the platforms just do this themselves if it has so much value? And I think we were accurately said, no, the platforms aren't interested in building an algorithm just for Procter & Gamble and a different one for Pampers and Tide. It's not going to happen.
If you were, let's say you were younger, you were about to start your own business again, you're somebody who has this big idea, who's trying to get people to listen to you, who's trying to raise the funds for it. What would be your advice for somebody who is a new founder of a company or is thinking about starting their own company?
See, as an older founder, I think just there was that point of time, beginning of the pandemic, I had a business plan, I was ready, and I did it. And the person I am today might not have done it. So I think it's not really a person. It's a coming together of a person and a time and market condition and a plan, right? So, and partners. Oh yeah, that's one thing I would give. It's go with partners. There are way too many decisions for one person. And, if you trust yourself enough to make every decision, you probably have an ego problem. So I think there's ways that you could do it with advisors, but I really do think it was certainly better for me. And I think it's probably better for everyone to have partnership at the highest level, someone who's going to protect you from your own worst ideas and can be very frank with you with it. So I think that we've holed up these people like Musk and Bezos and Jobs who didn't work well with anyone, but I don't think it's usually like that. I think it's usually partners, and even those guys probably have at least one or two people who will tell them things they don't want to hear. It's just impossible to know. No one knows everything.
Yeah, I think the idea, the sort of myth of the solo entrepreneur is it is kind of a myth, right? I mean, you might have one person who drives the company forward or drives the idea forward, but we all need other people to help us with our endeavors.
Yeah, there's way too much work, and like I could just see in me and Allie, like I'm very future oriented. She's very current moment oriented. Like I could think about the customers for a while. She's always customer focused. Like I could be deep in the product for a long time. She can't stay deep in the product and the technical conversations for a long time. I'm introverted, she's extroverted. She'll go to a conference and talk to 120 people. If I do that, I need to sleep the entire next day. Like it's and that's just a few of the jobs like we're doing. Oh, I can't do accounting at all. She could be a CFO. Like, just to meet someone who's like, oh yeah, I'm founder CEO and I handle my books, I do the conferences and sales, I'm the head of product. Like, bullshit.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your skills do complement each other quite well.
Yeah, that's the idea. We clash in marketing. We both have strong marketing plans.
Adam, at the end of each episode, we like to ask, sort of what your forecast is for your area. So I'm going to ask you, what is your forecast for the future of ad tech? In 2025, I know AI has been a big topic. I know curation has been a big topic. But this year, what do you think is going to be the next big topic that drives the industry forward?
Well, like I said, I'm focused on the enterprise market, and my big prediction is that the enterprise market and the mid-market will really split. It's like that if you have enough data to make your own models, you're just going to go off on a different path into the age of AI, and the rest will have to aggregate in some way. So I think we'll see like we've seen enterprise pull away from big agencies. I think we'll see them increasingly pull away from big tech. And they'll come back, right? Agencies will develop enterprise solutions for sure, because it's such a big part of their business. Tech too doesn't want to miss whatever minority percent they get from big business, so they'll be there. But it'll be clearer to see the split of who's working off a pool of data and who's working off their customers' data and outcomes in a true enterprise solution, and that will result in really different ways of working. Right, when you're in big and small companies. And I think that's probably normal in American business history, and it's only been in digital advertising that freaking Coca-Cola is using the exact same tools as your local pizza place for their advertising. I think that was the anomaly, and that we'll see that go by the wayside, and it never made a whole lot of sense. I don't think AI, at least in our sector, results in mass firings, but I do think it really upends the workflow. And what parts are commoditized and what parts are competitive, I think will change a lot. Like Chalice is 35 people, and we're extremely busy. Like maybe we do the work of 100, right? Because we're using so many AI tools, or maybe you could say 300, but it's not like automation really replaces people. It doesn't seem to be, unless a business is already very inefficient by design, which might apply to some. What else? I think that all the technology that we're working in, the platforms, the data, and the AI tools will tend toward commoditization, right? They're all going to get better. They'll all be competitive. Prices will go down and efficiency should go up. And I think it shifts a lot of the work in competitive looking 5 years down the line to creative, right? To human ideas. Like I have a pretty sunny attitude toward it, like a belief that if it becomes very, very cheap to make a TV commercial and get that commercial on TV and have it only show to people who are the best possible recipients of that TV commercial, and maybe it costs $100 to launch a product, then we should see the equivalent of the better mousetrap, like in every category, right? Anyone who has something better will have an easier time bringing it to market, and that should speed up the productiveness of the economy in a lot of ways. So that's the sunny picture, where there's the American AI market, ad markets are well regulated and competitive. There's a lot of good that come out of it, right? Innovation in advertising and innovation in every field that does advertise. So I like to give the positive picture because I think everyone also has a doomsday scenario, and we don't have to cover that here.
Adam, thank you for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is fun. It's great to see you, Morgan.
Great to see you too. The Forecast is powered by Rain the Growth Agency, a leading independent advertising agency. I'm your host, Morgan Willis. Art design is by Eric Hernandez, production by Beatrice Livioco. The show is edited by Morgan Willis and Eric Hernandez. Follow along with the show on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to stay in the loop. We'll see you next time.